Hello, it's Karsten. I've had a bit of a long week and I just wanted to stop and relax a bit. Because you see, we all have a tendency to put too much pressure on ourselves in many, many areas of life, and learning a language is one of them. Sometimes we make things too complicated for ourselves. We imagine things are more difficult than they really are. And sometimes we look at something in a new language and we see it as difficult, when actually it's something we already know. This is no more true anywhere than in the N and M in Gaelic, which is something I clocked very early on was something I already knew. And I can't remember if I was told it. I probably was. Can't remember who by though. So it's something you already know. Have a look at these words. Now tell me, what are the opposites of these? No problem, right? Just add in. Nothing could be simpler. But what about these ones? Now naturally, you've said impossible and improbable, yeah? So we've added "im." Or have we? Have we perhaps added "in" again, but just the "n" has become an "m"? Well, if you think about it, the opposite of a balance is an imbalance, and the opposite of something being material is for it to be immaterial, and they both again have "n". So our "in" has become "im". Now when I said, you know it, can you remember ever incorrectly writing "impossible" or "imbalance" or "immaterial"? You certainly never said it, because it would be quite tricky to say. You know that that "n" becomes an "m" for M, B or P. Why does it do that? Well, as I said earlier, it would be difficult to say it otherwise, because if you think about it, what is the common factor between B, M and P, B, M and P? If you say it and you think about it and you feel what you're doing, it should be obvious that these are the sounds of English that use both lips. B, M, P. Your lips close together. What's happening with the words imbalance, immaterial and impractical, for example, is that your lips are closing for the B, the P or the M early. If you try to say an N with a closed mouth, which you can do now if you want, then you're going to say an M. Yeah? Now, another thing you've probably never thought about is the opposite of balanced. And the opposite of balanced is unbalanced. Sorry, did I say unbalanced? Because really, it's unbalanced. Maybe you don't believe me. Maybe you think you say unbalanced. Well, I didn't believe it either. When I started studying linguistics in university, I was studying linguistics inside of the English language. They told us about this and I didn't really believe it until I remembered back in my childhood, in my primary school years. Computers were a lot simpler then, and we actually had books of games when you had to type in the program before you could play the game. We did have games that were already available. You didn't have to type all of them in, but we had these books. And as a family, what we would do is we would take turns and somebody would read from the book while somebody else typed it in. And as I was reading these things out, at the age of about 7 or 8, I realised that I was reading the word you see above me now as input. And so I taught myself to say input. Now I had naturally read it off the page, and because I heard myself saying it so many times, I decided, oh no, I'm writing this differently from how it's written. I must be wrong. But then yes, years later, I was taught that everybody says input because it's very difficult to say an N before a P or a B or an M. Now, if you're wondering why some words have it written and others don't, the simple answer is the words that have it written come from Latin. Roman scholars 2 millennia or more ago decided, oh, we say it that way, we should write it. Un doesn't come from Latin. Un is something that has been in English since before there was an English. And for some reason, the English-speaking scribes didn't write it. I don't know whether they didn't notice it, or maybe they noticed it and said, I bet it's the same thing. It's un, and you would pronounce it that way because you pronounce it that way. It's impossible to say. I can't ask them. However, I can tell you that even today, if someone is tasked with writing a new spelling system, say many of the countries that used to be in the Soviet Union look at moving to using the Latin alphabet like English does. And they have the same debate every time. Do you write these things so that they don't change the written form, even if it means not always matching the pronunciation? Or do you go for something that always matches the pronunciation, even if it means changing form? No one's quite sure which is better. So that's why some languages do it one way and some do it the other way. Now, Gaelic agrees with Latin. Gaelic says we write it. Wherever it happens, wherever that N becomes an M, we write it. So that's why when we have Antai, we have Mbalach, and we have Matagali. It's easier to say, so we say it that way. We say it that way, so we write it that way. Simple. You already know. And of course, when we have Aun the Nuist, we have Aun Barai. Because it would be hard to say Aun the Barai. It's so much easier to say Aun Barai. And because we say Aun Barai, we write Aun Barai. Simple. And then when we're talking about their thing, again, that's another one where the N becomes an M. Antai, their house. Ambala, their town. But there's one spot where you may have to think slightly differently. Because in Gaelic, F also takes an M. like unfair, alnam fifa. Now, you will never see an N written as an M before F in English. But that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. I don't believe everyone does it. I haven't gone back and checked because I don't think it's particularly important. But most of us will say information and not information. That's how I remember it from university anyway. It's hard to be sure. But one thing you can be sure of is that Gaelic does it that way. Fair. Alnam fifa. I suppose what Gaelic's thinking is that, well, F may only use one lip, but it still uses your lips. So Gaelic makes it move like the lips. But you've got to remember that F is pronounced slightly differently in Gaelic than English anyway. There is a Gaelic accent which sounds different. So in the end, it's just the position of the F feels a bit more lippy in Gaelic than in English, or certainly in Latin. And so they pronounce it with the M before it. Still all seems kind of simple to me. So yeah, you already know it. You can already do it. You've been doing it your entire life. So just sit back, relax, and enjoy the view.